I'm in a new location. Josh and I are back. It is crazy. Welcome to What's on Repeat. You know the drill. It's even crazier this time, though, because you know how we always are like, hey, albums we've been listening to, singles on upcoming albums. Words are hard. And then we're like, well, we can't do concerts now because of COVID. We do anticipated artists. Well, guess what? We're finally doing concerts. I was going to suggest this to Josh, and then Josh beat me to it because I had a concert I went to, but then he suddenly went to two concerts.
Two concerts in 1 week, too.
Hey, you know, I know that grind. I think I saw Snail Mail, then I saw Earl Sweatshirt, and then I saw Boney Bear in 3 days. Each night.
Wow.
That's a good. I think that's a good 1, 2, 3 punch. It's not like there's not a weak spot in there. Let's get into these albums. The albums that I actually have some opinions on some of them. Usually I don't. I saw your list and I was like, I got this easy.
Oh yeah. Well, so my first album, I mean, this is pretty much a pretty classic Joshua Core kind of pick here. Home Video by Lucy Dacus. Of course, you know, Lucy is kind of part of the whole Boy Genius universe alongside Phoebe Bridgers and Julian Baker. So my first experience with the Lucy Dacus album was Historian, which came out in 2018. I thought it was fine. Like, it certainly had its moments. I mean, Night Shift is without a doubt a banger, but I just didn't really get the hype for some reason. Like, I really wanted to love the album because that album got lots of acclaim and everything, but yeah, it didn't stick. Then later on, I checked out her collaborative effort with Phoebe and Julian, Boy Genius, obviously. And, you know, that EP was great, in my opinion. Like, you think about collaborative efforts, and they can be very hit and miss, but like that one, I felt like the three singers and songwriters brought out the best in each other. And Lucy, I thought, showed lots of potential on there. And I was, you know, excited for the album, hearing the singles like Thumbs or Hot and Heavy, VBS, that stuff. And thankfully, the album lived up to my expectations. This is just, every song is just so immaculately written in terms of like the stories. Like, she's definitely pulling a lot from like her childhood and like her teens, obviously. Very effectively cutting album. Like, and also I'd say instrumentally, this is a much stronger album because like one of my issues with like her older stuff is like it sounded kind of generic, like as far as like indie singer-songwriter goes. Also, the more lo-fi elements, I felt like, you know, the dynamics weren't really there.
Yeah.
But this album, I think, balances out like the more distorted, noisier rock elements. Like First Time, definitely a banger.
First Time is a really good song.
But then balancing it out with, you know, some more synthetic textures and like, you know, some kind of, you know, more piano centric ballads. Yeah, I'd say, you know, it's definitely an album of the year contender, but not quite my album of the year. You know, that spoiler alert, that's actually going to come. That's going to be one of the next albums I talk about. But yeah.
I was going to say, before you actually move off of it, because this is a record that I did listen to, I do agree with you a lot with the whole, I do think there is still kind of like a familiarity to like that sort of genre. Like, I think, you know, you look at like a Snail Mail, which we just brought up, like Snail Mail,
Soccer Mommy,
Clario, how do you say her name?
Claro.
Claro.
And I said Soccer Mommy.
And Soccer Mom, my apologies. Yeah. So like she's kind of in that vein, and I agree with you a lot. I don't think anything she's necessarily doing is revolutionary. I do think the way she builds songs is really good. She has a more engaging voice. Like, her voice grabs me. Like, it's like, it definitely, like, the moment I hear her, I'm like, okay, I'm pulled in.
Oh yeah, and also it has that thing where, you know, right when the album starts and she starts singing the opening lines of Hot and Heavy, tears come to my eyes. Like that's how impactful it is. Now I'm going to go into another style of music that I cover quite regularly. I'm going to delve into some Americana and specifically country soul with the album Stand for Myself by Yola. So Yola's debut album, Walk Through Fire. I liked it when it came out. Over time though, it has grown into like one of my favorite country soul albums from the last decade. I mean, just like her, similar to Lucy Dacus, like her voice immediately when you first hear it, she immediately just like pulls you in, like just like any good like soul or R&B singer would. Uh, and I was definitely looking forward to this album because she's coming off of an impressive debut that showed lots of potential, and thankfully, she avoided the sophomore slump uh, by making an album that just shows some of her best singing probably ever. And also, this album definitely has plenty in common with her debut, sort of pulling from classic country as well as like classic soul and, stuff like that. It feels a little more lavish and kind of colorful. Like the horns on this thing, beautiful, and also like the gospel choirs and the drums I think sound great on this thing too. I don't know if this is better than her debut. I mean, her debut album, last time I listened to that thing, it gave me like chills like the entire time. This album didn't really do that as much for me, but still just really well made country soul for sure. Um, so my next album, Left Turn again, and this is the only hip hop album that I have for today's episode. I will say this: the 5 albums I have in here, I've done a pretty good job like listening to them on a daily basis. So yeah, I'm very happy, about that. But the album is Gumbo by Pink Sifu. Pink Sifu, singer, rapper, arguably one of the more, I guess, subversive and like ambitious people in the underground hip hop camp right now. And I will say this: the first time I heard of him was like he contributed to a couple of songs on that new Avalanches album. Like, oh yeah, and the funny thing is, my introduction to him was "Running Red Lights," which is an Avalanches song with Rivers Cuomo and Pink Sifu. And, believe it or not, it actually pans out quite well. And I also checked out, he put out an album last year with another rapper named Fly Anakin called Fly Seafoods. That was like kind of a concept album where like both rappers were like the owners of a record store. And, you know, I yeah, I thought that was a pretty cool, like, I mean, it wasn't particularly remarkable, but I thought it had, some good beats and, some good raps. But this album, like, oddly enough, doesn't really sound as much like that album. Like, it's definitely more, it's also kind of conceptual in that, sort of like how Gumbo is like this like heavily seasoned soup that like has different variations in the South. This album is this very like subversive kind of very dreamy take on like various strains of like southern hip hop. So yeah, it's just such a smooth, flavorful kind of hip hop stew going on here, and psychedelic for all the right reasons. Like a song like "Long Hair Don't Care" is just like, it's like just this very trippy sort of take on like cloud rap. A lot of versatility from start to finish. I mean, Sifu is a rapper. I mean, he's not like a Quelle Chris or a Billy Woods, Arm& Hammer, that kind of thing. But like, he definitely does, have a very distinctive voice. And I think a lot of the other people like features that he has on here, I think really add a lot to this album. But then again, with an album called Gumbo, it kind of has to have, kind of a bunch of different things sort of coming together, basically.
Has an
like,
overall meaning to it.
Yes, but yeah, really like that album. The next album, so I mentioned earlier, I had my album of the year coming up, so this is it. I may have had my debates before, but like, yeah, I don't think there's really a debate. I think this is the one for me in 2021. The album is Glow On by Turnstile. Um, so fun fact, I'm from Maryland, and actually this band actually comes from Baltimore, so they're kind of a local band for me. Last time I checked them out was their last record, Time and Space, which came out 2018. I didn't get to listen to it till 2019, which is interesting. I thought it was decent. They definitely showed a lot of potential. Like, I didn't think the record was great. There were certainly still, yeah, corners of it where I was just like, they could do this better. It was clear when I heard that album that, they had a distinctive sound that was like heavy riffs mixed with some very infectious pop melodies. And like, there were kind of some more psychedelic, more experimental pockets as well that I thought were interesting. But this album is just like, it's an even further refinement of those elements. Like, this is, I knew Turnstile had a great album in them, and this album is absolutely it, and maybe a little more than that. The grooves on this thing are insane. A song like Don't Play, for example, that Latin groove is just like how did they make that happen, and how did they make it work? A song like Dance Off, very appropriately named. It's I think it's just really funny how this band manages to be the kind of group like where you could bang your head and it's like mosh pit worthy, but it also just like it's so catchy. Like you can't get out of your head. Like sometimes you could just vibe. This is the one thing you could just like either bang your head to or vibe out to.
Well, yeah, this is also coming off the thing of this album having 2 Blood Orange features, which was one of the strength, like, because going into this, I knew the kind of band they were, so I wasn't necessarily like I really like this record too. He knows that I really liked it. I really thought it was awesome. I thought the energy was great. But going into it, I was kind of like, okay, I feel like I understand what I'm getting into. And it was really interesting. But when I saw Blood Orange was on 2 songs, like, what the hell? Like, how is that gonna work? It wasn't necessarily like off-putting, like in either a good or bad way. Like, it wasn't like, whoa, this is crazy, or like, ooh, this is bad. But I was like, that's such an odd collaboration.
Yeah, like, and it's like funny. Like, I never thought he would, sound good over like, yeah, like heavy riffs, but like on the closer, Lonely Desires, you have this and then like this falsetto vocal, and it also just flows so well. Like, it's a nice, short and sweet kind of listen. And even as someone who isn't typically like you may not know this, Brian, but like loud rock is not really my forte, but this album is incredible.
You're like, I don't know too much about the hard intense rock, but when this shit comes out,
yeah,
it slaps. You're
like
ah!
I mean, like, except like stuff like Idols or maybe some post punk or stuff like that.
Oh, hold on. Your mic cut out.
All right, so I was just talking about heavy music. Well, I think that is a really good segue into my final album, Sorta. Of course, this is like the latest addition to the list, and the album is Hey What by Low. So this band, I've heard they've been at it since like the early 90s, but this album is like my very first experience with them. I haven't listened to Double Negative, but like I've heard it kind of continues in that lane a little bit, like especially in terms of they both share a producer, BJ Burton, who BJ has done lots of stuff. Like, he did Kanye's Yeezus as well as like Bon Iver's 22 a Million, which is why both albums sound so warped pretty much. And I think this album just does a good job of being like very subtle and dreamy. Like, you could just kind of vibe to it, but it's also just so abrasive, like razor sharp. Like, I've only listened to maybe a few like metal albums this year, and yet this album may very well be the heaviest thing I've listened to this year. Like it kind of masters the whole quiet being loud kind of aesthetic. Like it's the kind of record where at one moment, like on a song like Disappearing or like Don't Walk Away, it's just it's just all kind of dreamy, and yeah, you're just kind of taking in the beauty. But then you have a song like More that's just like immediately it's like like it's like, and I think it's cool how it kind of starts out, it sounds like a car kind of revving up, like yeah, it's like the beginning of Working on It by Jay Dilla in a way. I think the album, the transitions and the flow, I think it's really nice and smooth. Like the way it's like one song, the end of it will actually be the beginning of the next song.
Yeah.
Or a way that like a vocal or something like that will just turn into some sort of loop or something like that. And also, even though this is like their 13th album and they've been at this for a long time, I think this is still a good like kind of entry point in their music. Like you don't have.
Oh, dang it.
I don't think you have to know like their 90s stuff or their 2000 stuff to really appreciate like what they're doing now is just like, yeah, it's easily like the most sort of refined and fully realized they've ever sounded, pretty much.
I agree, because I found out about them through Perfume Genius. That's like his favorite band. And I remember he did like this video where he talked about his like favorite records and he brought them up. And so that was around the time Double Negative came out. And I personally like that album more. I think the reason why I like it was I went into that record thinking, what, like I kind of knew a little bit of how they made music. So that album was like very like weird and abstract and dark and just sludgy. And I was sort of like, this is pretty cool. Like I was on my top 50 albums that year. This album, however, I think is a more, in like good ways though, like it's a very direct album. Like it's not as, the last album I felt like was a more slow burn, kind of weird, like more experimental record than this. Like I feel like this record kind of is more in your face and it's more direct. And it's not direct in like a bad way. It's just I feel like a lot of what they do is more in your face and you kind of pick up on it more.
Yeah, those are my those are my albums. Yeah.
Sorry, this will stay in the video. Something is going on with Josh's microphone, and he started talking and it made me mad. That's why I went like that. But then he started talking and he was fine. So I will say the majority of my list is actually albums that, like Josh, are ones that I have been going back to. This very first one is the only album that I just recently listened to. So Joshua, can you please pronounce the artist's name, the first artist that I need to talk about? Because I feel like I screw up every name.
Yeah, Lingua Ignota.
Thank you. See, it's the lingua part. I feel like I want to add too many syllables in there. But yeah, Lingua Ignota, Sinner Get Ready. Joshua and I had kind of a fun little discourse about this because I know he really liked her last record more than this. My personal opinion about her last record is I like her as a performer. She's very interesting. And I love like what she talks about and the way she writes. My problem with the last record was I think it was just too, like, I wasn't expecting it to be so in my face like I was. So unlike the Low record, like, or even the Turnstile record, it was very much like in your face. This, however, Sinner Get Ready, I know you brought this up. This album is stunning. Like, it is so angelic and it is so, like, in her performance, is, in my opinion, like everything on this album is way more captivating to me and way more interesting. Yes.
Oh yeah, and plus, it's Fantano's second 10 out of 10 of the year.
Yeah, and that's who I found out about her through, as obviously probably a lot of people with her last record. So And I
Yeah.
wasn't, and one of the things I was trying to say when we were going through all these issues was I wasn't ready for her like music as it is. Like I was telling Josh, every one of her songs is like really long. It feels like a drone song, like a Godspeed song, where it's this really long, like it has builds and it goes
Yeah.
through all these emotions, and the way she performs is like sometimes she's just like, and then other times she's like, and I'm like, she has all these different styles, and
Yeah. Range.
yeah, she has a big range, and yeah, like I think this record just it honestly got me more interested. I think it was mainly the production because I think her doing what she was doing over this just angelic sound, I thought was really good. But yeah, very good record.
Oh yeah, she's embracing more folk elements in here, and definitely
Yes.
like this dives even deeper into like, you know, kind of the more religious aspects of her music, and has all these little like voice snippets, like, you know,
Yes.
people have noted like the Jimmy Swaggart like voice snippets in there, like, yeah, stuff like that.
Yeah. No, it's, yeah, I really enjoyed it. But you know, you brought up a good point, religious elements. We're going from this kind of religion to another religion, and that is God. And what is God doing? God is partying. That's what Andrew WK believes on his brand new record. Really, what I want to say about this record is it's Andrew WK. And I think if you're well aware of the type of music he makes, this is definitely one of those kind of albums. His last record, I really liked. This record, however, is very different in the way that it's more tight and short. All the songs on here are a lot longer. I do think it overstays its welcome on some of the songs, but kind of like the Black Album, Weezer's Black Album. Now, before I talk anymore, I know a lot of people when I say that are either going to go, oh, God, really? I don't hate the Black Album like I think a lot of people do. And the way I'm comparing it is we all thought the Black Album was going to be this dark album, but it really wasn't. I mean, thematically, maybe songwriting wise, it was, but instrumentally, it was.
The Hustle sounds kind of edgy, I guess.
Yeah, like I think it definitely has some of those dark elements, but it's a Weezer album still. You know, that's kind of how this album is. It's very dark. It honestly is a lot more deep in a way where, like, you know, Andrew WK, he's like, I come from the party gods. I speak for the party gods. We're gonna party hard, be yourself, blah blah blah. This album thematically is a lot darker, and like it's what do you do with his big sort of stadium rock sound, but put it in a context of like, what if, you know, what if partying has bad things, Josh? You know, what if partying brings back? And that's what Andrew WK brings. But you know, if you're not a big Andrew WK fan, I don't know if you're gonna like this record. But I think if you're on board with what he's doing, I think it's a change of pace. I do think it definitely just sounds like Andrew WK from his last record, but doing it in a way where songwriting wise it's a little darker. But I still enjoyed it. I still think it was pretty solid. The next record.
Oh yeah, and by the way, the Andrew WK album is the only one on your list that like I haven't listened to. Yeah.
Hey, you know what? It's all good. I know you were kind of like, oh, I might have to check it out, but an album you just told me about that I already listened to, but you told me how gorgeous it is, how beautiful it is. That's a beginner's mind. Sufjan Stevens, Angela Day, Augustine. You know, Sufjan is one of those people where I think, like a lot of people, I really do love his more simple acoustic singer-songwriter, folk songwriter side of him. But honestly, when I think about my favorite records of his, I don't really think of like a Seven Swans. I think more of like Michigan for obvious reasons, but also the fact that that is such an eclectic, really grand record. And Illinois is a great record. And, you know, even Carrie and Lowell, which people think is kind of stripped back Sufjan, but it does have things in there that you see on like Age of Odds with some electronic stuff and all that.
Oh yeah, and
Yes.
oh yeah, and I will say this, you know, like it's funny. Last year I like mentioned his last record, and you know, I would say, you know, I his last record, The Ascension, I've kind of waned on recently because, yeah, you because I just prefer this Sufjan where it's like more just like melancholy and like kind of more tender, whereas on an album like The Ascension, like so basically I'm more into just like very like comforting Sufjan than like just very cold like kind of sort of angry Sufjan, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, and I still need to listen to that really big album he put out, the instrumental project when his dad passed away. It's like the 5 albums. It's like convocations, which I really want to listen to. I have the complete set on vinyl, which is exciting. But A Beginner's Mind is basically just these two writing music and having this element of like movie, like film nerd stuff in it. But I think as a film nerd, you can enjoy this record. But I think just as someone who loves Sufjan, you can literally listen to this front to back and not feel like you have knowledge of it, because I think Sufjan...
Oh yeah, because I haven't watched like some of the movies that they're talking about on here. So like, I just sort of...
the picture well, like it makes you interested in what they're talking about and the way there's that
like
song.
Basically, it may be inspired by film, but it's really at the core just a really beautiful singer-songwriter album.
Exactly. And I looked into Angelo's music a little bit more after this record, and he is on Asthmatic Kitty. So obviously collabing with him, it's like he's a label mate. And listening to his music, he definitely just sounds, and it's not an insult, he definitely has that Sufjan-ness to him, like with some of the stuff I heard. It's kind of that dreamy, like you were saying, fair, vulnerable vocal, indie folk kind of singer-songwriter music. We're going off of that collab, and we're going to another indie rock, indie singer-songwriter collab. It's not both their names, but it's a group called Big Red Machine. And this is How Long Do You Think It's Gonna Last? Aaron Dessner of The National, and I say Sufjan is my sweetheart, my other sweetheart, Mr. Justin Vernon of Bon Iver. Near the end, I think it kind of gets a little like some of the final songs on here. Besides, the last song is fucking beautiful. I love the last song. It's kind of what Aaron was doing with Taylor Swift, which she has 2 features on there, which is funny because both of her features are like flip-flopped. So like Renegade is her singing and Justin kind of does background. And then on Birch, which I love Birch, Justin singing and her in the background. So flip-flop.
Yeah, and it's funny. Nearly everyone that's talked about this album has, joked that, this record has a bunch of guests, including a little up-and-comer named Taylor Swift. It's like, which is so, for sure.
Yeah, and it's funny because this record is not on here. And I think I have a little bit more positive things to say about this record than Josh does, but this album reminded me of Donda a little bit. And I'm going to tell you why. I think this is done better before I move on. Like, I think this is a lot more interesting. Even if not everything works, I think, honestly, the first half of this record is perfect. I think the first half is honestly, song for song, incredible. I think Aaron has great vocals on it too, like the Ghost of Cincinnati. I love that. That is such a simple, sweet, just eerie acoustic track. I love it. It reminds me of, they both, like you were saying, it's definitely like, let's build the song. Let's build the sound. Let's do background vocals. Let's add our instrumentation. And then on a good amount of the songs, add our vocals, our songwriting, our voice. And then just like on Donda, let's bring in all of these people that we think are really talented and let them go on it. Elite Foxes.
Mitchell, I think.
Thank you. Josh has to say the names properly because I just ruin everyone's name. Taylor Swift,
Naeem or name,
which I know Justin's been, he's kind of up and coming, and that song is my favorite song
after him on I,
which is my favorite song off that album. That song, literally every time I listen to it, it just
I can hear.
That build is incredible. But like, I would say in terms of experimentation, that song is the one that makes me mad because the actual instrumentation I love. And then Justin starts singing and he sounds like that really Death Breath off of 22 A Million. He's like, and I'm like, no.
Oh, what song are you talking about?
Remind me. Here, let me look. It's the one with Naeem on it. I'm trying to remember.
Sabotage.
Maybe. It might be. But that song was so the way and then Justin comes in. He's like auto-tuned his voice. I'm like, no, Justin, what are you doing? Bad, Justin. Bad. But other than that, I think honestly, this may be my favorite record of the year so far, mainly because it just does what it does in a creative way. It's not perfect, but I think what the two of them pull off on here is really gorgeous at times. And I think if this is what I have of a Bon Iver record until I finally get a new record of his, I'll take it. And now the last record, I am so excited to talk about. Not excited to talk, like I like it, but I'm more excited to talk to him because I know we only said a few things. Is the new Injury Reserve record by the time I get to Phoenix, which first off, I know he doesn't know this. I was legit gonna try and go out to where you live and be like, hey, we should go meet up for the Injury Reserve show. Because I believe they may be coming to your area, and I was gonna be like, hey dude, this may be the moment where Brian and Joshua meet. And then I just got nervous because I was like, I didn't know if you were gonna be able to do it. So I ended up getting tickets to see them in Chicago. So I'm excited. I met them when they came in Detroit. I'm very excited to meet them again, hopefully, and talk to them. I really just want to say two things about this record. One is something that everyone's been talking about. One that I'm shocked nobody's talked about, and this is something Josh noticed as well. So the first thing I want to talk about is the sound of it. For the most part, I actually agree. I think other than, like, in my opinion, the Wild Wild West, I think that song, and then I think Smoke Clear or Clear Smoke, but like Superman, that ain't no saving me, oh yeah. like Outside was fabulous in my opinion up until one of the songs I'm going to talk about. Knees is, like, in my opinion, my favorite single of the year, so spoiler alert, I love that song. I think that song is gut-wrenching. I love it. I do think, like, Footwork and A Forest Fire is great. But let's talk about the one thing. When they did the interview with Fantano, they were talking about how this record was completely done way before Groggs passed. Where is Groggs on this album?
Well, I only heard Groggs on one song, and it's Footwork and A Forest Fire. I know because I know Fantano mentioned he was talking about Groggs' verse and stuff like that.
Like he's on that, he's on Knees, and apparently he's on part of postpartum. Yes. He does like background stuff. Here's my thing. At the end of the day, like, I'm not gonna judge, like, I'm not necessarily sitting here being all bitchy, like, where is he? It's more of like, did nobody notice that? Like, this record was completely done before he passed. And it's strange to me because, like, Josh brought it up perfectly. Like, people were saying, well, is Injury Reserve going to be okay without Groggs? And it's like, this kind of is a record mainly without him. Like, there's only one verse on here that is actually like his Knees verse is utterly devastating. Like, legitimately. Like, it hurts every time I listen to it. And then on Footwork and A Forest Fire, like, his energy is so chaotic and so captivating.
Yeah.
But then he's not really on the rest of the record. And, like, I don't need him to be on everything, but it's like you listen to this and it's very obvious that he's not on it that much because on everything else, granted, there's songs without him, there's songs without Richie. Him passing, it was more of I wanted to hear more because I was interested because when we heard a lot of, like, we heard what he was talking about was like a weird premonition, but when that whole thing is just one song that you put out, and then just that one thing, it kind of makes me think, like, was he just not on it that much? Was he on it a lot and they just cut him off? Like, what was the deal? So maybe we'll get the answer. Maybe we won't.
It's funny that, no one's really talking about it, considering a lot of people are talking about this album and very positively so. Like, yeah. I did not expect Anthony to give this a 9 or something like that. Like, because, like, I think their last album is a 9, personally. You know.
All I know is I enjoyed the record. You know, it's definitely not like one of the most re-listenable ones, but I think in terms of being something bold, I really like it. So yeah. But yeah, those are my records. But now we gotta go to singles before we get to our concerts. I'm so excited to talk about concerts. We've been here forever because we just figured out the whole stupid thing going on with Josh's microphone. So we're going into it. So we got 2 singles. I'm bringing both of them up because by the time we figured shooting this, I'm like, I might as well include them both. So I have to read the whole thing. It's as long as the band name. Invading the world of the guilty as a spirit of vengeance by The World is a Beautiful Place and I Am No Longer Afraid to Die. Also, Queen Sophie for President. The first song kind of just reminds me of that kind of old school, like 6-minute big gargantuan World Is song. Like it has a really great sense of movement to it. Sound wise, I think it definitely brings kind of that energy. Queen Sophie for President, I think, is a more immediate song that I think is a lot better than some of their stuff off their last record. I think their last record was a lot more immediate. And I know you brought it up where you were even saying when I brought them up as an anticipated artist, you were like, I didn't hate their last record. It just didn't stick with me. And I think that was part of a lot of people's issue was it didn't feel like it had that World Is flair. Queen Sophie for President, though, I love the synthiness of it. I love just the straightness of it. And I love the vocals on it. I think it's really good. On to you, sir.
All right. Now for my first single, you kind of like how Brian is very excited about The World Is coming back. I'm really excited about this band known as Parquet Courts coming back, and the song is called Walking at a Downtown Pace, which it's funny, I actually haven't listened to the song like since August or something like that, so this is the one I've had on repeat probably the least out of everything I have on here. My thing with Parquet Courts, so the first time I listened to one of their albums was Human Performance from 2016. I liked it, pretty solid, kind of, you know, sort of somewhat snarky, kind of post-punk and indie rock kind of album that had some good energy to it. Like, you know, I don't think the record was necessarily like groundbreaking, but it definitely showed a lot of potential. And then in 2018, they put out a little album called Wide Awake. And when I listened to that album, and I was excited to listen to it because I heard people like Anthony just like absolutely praising it. And I remember, yeah, like, you know, I remember hearing it and being like, holy shit, this is like legit stuff. Like the grooves, like the bass lines, like, oh my God, like just like, yeah, the bass lines are just insane. Like, and also just like, you know, they definitely got more political on that album, which it's the kind of album that just grows more relevant every day pretty much. Yeah, that record's amazing. Like, you know, I definitely think the hype was real, and yeah, so it's been a few years, but then again, that's kind of the case for every band because, you know, COVID, you know, because you know, because it seems there's like a gazillion artists that like made albums before COVID, and like some of them came out during like lockdown, and like some are just only now just coming out. Because I know they said in their interview with Anthony that yeah, they had finished this entire record like before it all happened. So this song kind of continues in the same lane that Wide Awake did. It's like the groove is sick, the lyrics are kind of political, and Andrew Savage has that signature little like, yeah, he has a very distinctive voice. Like immediately when you hear him go, violence is the fruit, like yeah, he has that kind of like tone that is like so like kind of classic Parquet Courts. And you know, this album, this new album, Sympathy for Life, it comes out October, so next month. And I know they also put out another song called Black Widow Spider. I haven't really listened to that one. When I saw they were coming back, I'm like, wait, I almost thought about talking about them as an anticipated artist.
And then
I've been waiting for them so long, and then they came through. So yeah.
I literally, if you guys notice, I put that on my albums list because I forgot that you had Parquet Courts on your list. So you saying their new album is literally coming out next month, I'm like, I need to put that.
The next band you're going to talk about, I think it's a great segue. I think they have similarities to Parquet Courts, but certainly heavier for sure. Yeah.
So my next song was supposed to be Valentine by Snail Mail, which nothing against that song. I still really like it. I love Lindsay. I'm going to go on record and saying that this next single, I'm calling it now. I think it may be my single of the year. And you're literally, I think, going to be confused when I say this. You're probably going to be like, Brian, are you on something? I may think that this is probably one of their best songs ever. And that is the Beachland Ballroom by Idols. So first off, I literally go in my email and I see from Vinyl Me Please, I see an email. They're dropping new records and I see Idols. And I'm thinking, oh, is it like, are they putting out like one of their older albums? As like, are they doing Brutalism as an exclusive pressing or something? I open it and I go, Crawler, what's this? So I do some research. The brand new album from Idols, inspired by Joe's car accident or motorcycle accident, whichever it is. And I'm like, wait a minute. Idols is coming out with a new record? What the hell? So I go and,
I mean, we're pretty much used to, Joe Talbot's always been very candid about traumatic experiences in his, like in his life, like both in interviews and in his music too.
Yes. So hearing that a new album was coming out, I was kind of already like, okay, like I wasn't necessarily like wanting one, and not in a bad way, but I was kind of like, cool. The moment this song played and I heard that riff, I heard those creepy pianos, and the moment Joe's just, I'm like, oh my God. And the way it transitions in the second half to just that dun, 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 bum, 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 bum. And he is, and he's just like, damage.
Like
Joshua, you were bringing up earlier
classically like punishing Idols.
Like, you know how earlier you were talking about Lucy and you were saying how I like emotional? I was shook listening to this. So much was going through me and it just hit me like a shit ton of bricks. I think this song, when you look at their 4 albums, you look at Brutalism and they have that just dark political punk. Then they did Joy as an Act of Resistance, which took that blueprint and spun it on its head and wrote some of the most captivating and direct and just politically charged and so interesting punk rock. Then they went with the more direct in-your-face route again with Ultramono, with Kenny Beats producing it. This album, which is produced by Kenny Beats again, is that, but they're doing it in a way where this is like a slow soul ballad that turns into a head-banging banger, but it's kind of like, it's so depressing. And like, I am so interested in hearing this because no matter what about Idols, like you were saying, Joe is so vulnerable and his performance is so, just like Lingua Ignota, is so captivating and you just feel it. So I don't know if I'm going to go into
like straight singing or like, or other times being like, something like that.
Lindsay, I love you, girl. Like I told you guys, I saw her live. I love it. The Valentine music video is wild. She's like killing someone in it. It's wild. But Idol's last second was like, I'm gonna fuck your whole list up, Brian. And
all right. Moving on to my second single, which I will say it's definitely very much could not be more different from the song you just talked about. This is definitely more on sort of like the bright kind of upbeat pop side. The song is Silk Chiffon by Muna, featuring, I'm wearing her shirt right now. Talk about Lindsay being your girl. Of course, it features my girl, Phoebe Bridgers, like on guest vocals. Which, fun fact, this band actually signed this year to, Phoebe has her own record label,
Oh, okay, cool.
which she started like late 2020, and she's got like a few artists signed to it, and Muna being one of them. And you know, I I know I've heard of them before. Like I know they put out a record in 2019. I never got around to it for some reason. That I will say this song. It's just a very like addictive, very anthemic kind of piece of pop with some indie elements, and it has like strong acoustics to it. It oddly enough, like the song kind of sounds like a Taylor Swift song a little bit, because a lot of acoustics and like the pop, like it sounds like, this literally sounds like a mix of like, yeah, maybe like, like Red era, but and also like Folklore, Evermore, that kind of stuff. Hook's very catchy. There's a good little trade-off lead vocal thing going on. I just couldn't stop listening to it. It is totally an earworm for sure. So yeah, there you go.
Very solid, very exciting amount of music we had this time. We may bring this back for the next episode, the anticipated artist, but it was never by anticipated artists. We've been waiting. COVID's been a bitch. And we are back with in-person concerts. So we're saying screw the anticipated artists for now. We're going straight into concerts.
Woo!
We are going to talk about 3 shows in total. 1 for me, 2 for you. Of shows that we saw. Tell us, what were the 2 shows that you went to see? Tell us about it.
So the first show, I saw Jason Isbell and the 400 Unit, as well as Waxahachie, who was the opening act. They played at Wolf Trap, which is a venue in Vienna, Virginia. The show was on September 14th. One of my all-time favorite songwriters, like Working Today, is without a doubt Jason Isbell. Like, I mean, he's literally fresh off the back of 4 great albums. Like, not 2, not 3, like 4. Just like from Southeastern to Something More Than Free, to Nashville Sound, to last year's Reunions, which I talked about on our very first episode. Like,
that is true.
Yeah, like this is actually the 3rd time I've seen him live, so yeah, it kind of makes sense. I've been a fan for a while. It makes sense. I already know he's like really good live. But yeah, just like he was just great live. Like I will say, in terms of like when you think about a good live venue, you think about acoustics, because sometimes you leave a concert and your ears can't stop ringing because it was so loud. I never had that kind of problem like being at Wolf Trap. Just like it kind of has to do with me not being in the front row or something like that, being just kind of, you'll notice, there are like these different levels of seats, and we were kind of up on one of the higher levels. You can hear the singer really well. Like I could hear every word Jason sang, just like sounded great. He's a phenomenal guitarist too. Like anytime he breaks into a solo, he never half-asses, his guitar solos. His band is great. Good selection of tunes, which I pretty much knew every song he played except for an REM cover they did at one point. And now Waxahachie, musical project of singer-songwriter Katie Crutchfield, definitely very much in that old snail mail, Lucy Dacus like kind of lane. Even though her latest record actually saw her delve into more like a rootsy kind of Americana sound. It's funny, she played mostly songs from like that albums, not a lot of her older stuff, but considering the kind of sound she's embracing now, it kind of makes sense. But like I definitely would have liked to see her maybe mix it up a little bit, like, but still just like her singing was great. I thought the band did a good job. My second concert, which I know we've kind of we've gone on and on about certain things, but I'm probably going to do the same for this second concert. So the concert is Dr. Dog at the 930 Club in Washington, D.C. on September 16th. and fun. And the show actually is so they're currently on their last tour right now. They're not breaking up, or they're not calling it quits or anything. They just you know this is their last tour, which is funny considering this is their first since COVID. This is a band that, to me, that I have a pretty long standing relationship with. So like, I've been reviewing albums since I was like 11 years old, and so from a very young age I already was reviewing albums. And when I was 12, one of the bands I reviewed was Dr. Dog, and they actually saw my reviews and immediately became fans. And, they actually invited us to a concert at one point, mid 2013. That was at the Exponential Festival in Camden, New Jersey. And we got to, meet the guys and then see them perform, which was definitely pretty cool. At the time, I was really obsessed with this band. Over time, I have kind of, sort of, I have cooled down on them a little bit, like, especially since I'm more of a fan of like their mid 2000s stuff, which is like, it's sort of like, indie rock meets the Beach Boys in a way, like where there's a lot of vocal harmonies, and, it's definitely often has this very bright kind of sunny vibe to it. I mean, obviously they have some darker stuff too. And then I will say this, they do put on a pretty great, very energetic live show. And I feel like at the show, and this show was no exception. Like, this is their last tour, and clearly they were giving it their all when they performed. And it was a good mix of like some of their older stuff and some of the new as well. And obviously they have very passionate fans. Like when we saw them live, people were dancing, and like some of this show we were like kind of right in the front, and like some of the fans in the audience like knew every word to some songs, which was kind of cool. Like it was all coming full circle, because they were one of the first bands that I reviewed, and that people know me because I reviewed Dr. Dog, that kind of thing. But yeah, that's my second concert.
You were world famous. You're known.
Yeah. Oh
yeah,
and then it would be years later, and I reviewed Phoebe Bridgers and stuff like that I once again got everyone's attention.
Yeah, now you're besties with her.
All right, guess you should talk about your concert now.
Well, yeah, I feel like my concert, when I say who it is, people are gonna just kind of be like, "Oh, okay," but it's my boyfriend, so I have to go see him live. And that's Mr. Harry Styles. You all know the One Direction. It's Mr. Harry Styles. He was at the LCA here in Detroit on September 20th. Jenny Lewis opened up for him. I've always heard
it. Formerly Ryan O'Reilly. Yeah.
She was fine. I'll be honest, when I never really knew too much about her, and when I saw her open, it really made sense why he picked her, because she has that like, I'm not from a certain generation, but I'm gonna dress like old school and like have that whole aesthetic. Like that's kind of her thing. She was fine. I didn't hate her. I didn't love her. I genuinely love his debut. I don't think either album he's done has been remarkably groundbreaking, but I've really liked him as a songwriter, as a performer, and I just think his songs are really good. And I think Fine Line has definitely grown on me a lot more, because I feel like the first half of that record is a little safer, and the second half is like strange and experimental, like Sunflower. Sunflower was great to hear live, but as a performer, he's really good. Like, he knows how to get a crowd going. His set list was really good. He basically did like the majority of his songs. There was a viral moment that happened at our concert where there was a girl in the pit or on the floor who wore a banana costume, And while he was preparing for Watermelon Sugar, he was singing and he was having everyone go like, hey, hey. And then he saw her, and there's a really good TikTok online that I might have to send you. He sees her and he goes, she's dressed as a banana. She's dressed as a banana. Hey. And he kept singing that, and it was really funny. But no, he's a really damn good performer. I think his band is phenomenal. Like, he has such a great band. I loved how he had one of those stages where it was like a 360 stage where he just kind of went everywhere. He was really good. There's really nothing I have to say other than just, you know, I was really excited to see him, and he was my first concert back from all this COVID stuff.
Cool.
But yeah, so on that note, ladies and gentlemen, we're back with What's on Repeat. And it was great. It was wonderful. Listen to all of these freaking albums. Listen to every single one of them. I don't care if you don't want to. You go listen. And then go into the Idol song like 50 million times in a row like I did. You don't have to. I will. You don't have to, though.
Yeah.
But Josh, do you have anything else to say to the people? Oh, sorry. Go follow his stuff. Go follow his stuff. Go follow my stuff. Go do the things. I had to say that real quick. Josh, do you have anything else to say before we're probably back at the end of the year?
I hope you all, so check out these albums, and hopefully you enjoy them as much as we did. And once you get to Turnstile, you never know. You may just end up listening to it over and over again the way I did. So hopefully that's the case. Yeah.
Well, hey, I told you guys to listen to the Idol song 50 million times. He told you maybe you should listen to the Turnstile record a bunch of times. So we're telling you to do it, but you don't have to, but you should.
Yeah, all right.
So, bye, everyone.